Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. This is episode number 66. Today we're talking 0.109 and we're chatting with Matt. So as usual, we have Phil. Hey Phil.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And we've also got Matt. How's it going, Matt?
Hey.
This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabu Casa. Easily and securely access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that also supports the Home Assistant project. Configuration is via the user interface, so no fiddling with router settings, SSL certificates, or YAML.
All right, so let's jump right into it. 0.109. There's a couple of cool new things here. So there's a new integration config page. Have you seen that, Phil?
Looks amazing. Remember last time I was saying how icons were I was really pleased about icons coming in. This is now it's starting to really take place.
Yeah, I think it looks really nice. I haven't actually. I'm just looking at it from the preview. I updated mine last night, but I didn't have time to actually go through it. But it looks really slick. So that's awesome.
Another new UI update is there's a few updates to the weather cards. There's a brand new weather card, and I'm hoping this will be more, especially with the dark sky, closing down next year. Hopefully this new weather card will be a bit more applicable to other weather services as well, but it looks pretty nice. It looks, nice and colorful. So yeah, if you're using Lovelace or as a dashboard, then that'll be a very nice improvement for you.
Yeah. Also, there's some new logs for adding integration. So anytime it causes stability issues or anything like that, there's actually logs around that's being added. So you can get a little more insight into it. And when you're troubleshooting, you can give some of those logs as well to the devs. And whenever you're, if you put any issues in GitHub, anything like that, it's more information for you to give in there so that hopefully they can find whatever is causing that problem.
This is good. I don't know if you guys have had it, but I've noticed a few times where my Home Assistant instance will lock up for, however long it is. And there must be something just an automation's running or causing too much memory usage on the whole system and it just locks. I find that I poll my Ring video camera to make sure it's still online. Mm-hmm. And, maybe actually just the last night I got an alert at 3 a.m. that the Ring video camera had disconnected from the Wi-Fi, but it hadn't. It just turns out that Home Assistant couldn't detect all the device trackers on the network for something. So something is, it's causing a few stability issues for me, and I'm hoping that with these new logs, I'll be able to go in and say, all right, 3 a.m. I got that alert. Let's take a look. All right, sure enough, this integration was causing issues, and I can forward it on to them.
Yeah.
Another feature that's come back is scenes are now supporting transitions again. So if you have two scenes and they've got the same light in them, and let's say you go from scene 1 to scene 2 and you call I think it's the scene.turn-on or scene.apply service, and you put in a transition time, that will then be passed down to the lights as well. So therefore you can use the transition to fade from red to green if the two scenes have those details in them. So good to see that coming back in. It sort of gives scenes a bit more of a nice touch to it.
Yeah. Do you know if there was a reason it was removed? Was it not working properly, or did people just not want it? What was that?
I'm guessing originally a lot of things, for example, like your air conditioner or a switch maybe can't support transition. And if you did pass it to a scene, it would just pass that data to every service in the scene, and it could potentially cause issues. So I think they just erred on the side of caution, removed it all, and now they're like, well, hang on, let's bring it back and just only push it down to what supports transitions.
Interesting. Okay.
Could be wrong, but that was what I'm guessing would be the case.
Yeah. Oh, neat. All right. Discord integration. So now you can have direct messaging if you use Discord or if you use that integration. So instead of putting it into a channel or whatever, you can have it directly message you, which is pretty handy, I guess. To me, I'd rather the one-on-one kind of thing, but not that I use Discord as a method of notification, but it's kind of cool. It's good to have, I think.
Yeah, but I'm guessing if you've got a family Discord server and you only want a notification to you and not have to bug the whole family via a room, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
ASUS WRT has now added a new sensor. It will now show you the number of devices connected to your network. So that's cool if you want to maybe do some automations based on presence, how many phones are connected to the network, or, if 10 devices are connected to the network, that means at least 2 people are home, for example. And also, it'd be cool in your Grafana graphs as well to log that out.
Talk about some breaking changes now. There's a lot of integrations that can now be set up through the UI. So as part of that, obviously that means stuff might break. So there's a few different sensors or so on and so forth that are kind of will cause issues. So like the flu near you, the Synology DSM, the National Weather Service, Roomba, the Panasonic Viera TVs. And there might be a couple more. Check the list, have a read through, and if there's something broken, then this might be why. So have a look at that and make your decision based on that.
And another breaking change for SmartThings. So you can no longer use the SmartThings Classic mobile application to install the Home Assistant Smart App. And I know, Rohan, do you still use SmartThings? Or you used to?
I do. It's still for the I guess the 4 Z-Wave devices I have left. It still acts as a radio, and I actually just had to repair it, or reintegrate it with Home Assistant.
Right.
And I did have to use it with the classic mobile app and stuff, which I actually would rather not, because to me it's hey, flip devices. I'd rather just do it straight through the web.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with this breaking change, but I don't think this will break the actual flow, because I don't actually interact with the app. I actually have the app uninstalled for the longest time. I think what's breaking is the install experience.
Yeah, so moving forward, I think if you've already linked your SmartThings and Home Assistant together, there's nothing you need to worry about. However, if in the future, you may reinstall Home Assistant, or you may go to, or you want to do a SmartThings integration for the first time, you'll have to do it through the web. If maybe there's an old blog article you're reading and someone's mentioned that they had to use a classic mobile app, that's no longer supported.
Yeah. The recorder component. So basically, Purge Interval has been deprecated within the record component. So basically what will happen is every night, Home Assistant will purge your database nightly at 4:12 a.m. Why 4:12? No idea, but
maybe 4:20 would have been better.
Yeah. And but I mean, at the same time, it's I actually don't think it's a bad use case. I do use the recorder component, and I do have flushing every 2 days or something like that. I don't remember. Just because I found that it, my database otherwise got way out of whack, and it was massive with every motion sensor trigger and this and that and all that stuff. So I think it's a good use case to do that. You can still control when the database is purged. You can do that manually by calling the recorder.purge service. So just have an automation, and if you want to do it more often than nightly at 4:12 a.m. maybe, then you can call that service.
So I think it's fair to just point out that there are two settings that control the recorder component. So there's one which was the old Purge Interval, which would control when Home Assistant would delete. And there's another one that actually dictates how many days of data to keep in Home Assistant's database. So,
good point. So I might have been confusing those then.
Yeah, so I think by default, Home Assistant will track 10 days worth of data in your database. And instead of now purging, every couple of days, every day at 4:12, it will go in and delete, any data that's older than 10 days from your database, just so you always have a consistent size in your database and it doesn't get too big.
Yeah, which makes sense. It's more predictable too, right? Especially if you're on a smaller sized SD card or what have you.
All right, Matt. Well, this is the time we get to really pick your brain. So I guess we should start another New Zealander on the show. Always good to have the Southern Hemisphere represented. So thank you for that.
Right.
Oh, exactly.
I got to say we've had more New Zealanders than not lately, I think.
I know, right? So we've got your email, and I guess maybe just introduce how you're using Home Assistant, because it sounds really cool.
Yeah. So, hey, I'm Matt, and there's basically I had a summer internship at a engineering place called Jackson Industries, and what my manager, boss person, he's been a listener of the show, and he's sort of been interested in the industrial application of Home Assistant for a while, because there's sort of a lot of solutions that do Home Assistant sort of esque functions that are tens of thousands of dollars in sort of an industrial, very bespoke kind of a way. And he was like, okay, here's the Raspberry Pi that I grabbed from my junk drawer at home. go see if you can make this work using like Arduinos and controlling our like tens of thousands of dollars CNC plant, basically. And that's what we did. We had 10 weeks, and what we did was we created a front end, a databasing, error recording, and basic sort of job control things. We used the Ubiquity cameras that are put in the, sorry, I'm making sure I get the terminology right, the picture elements cards. So I'm not sure if you guys can show the image that I've sent to you.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, it'll be in the show notes.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, so on there, if you're looking at that, you can see all of the different Ubiquity cameras on there. That actually took a little while to do. For some reason, it was fighting us the whole way, because we could get them as individual cards themselves, but to get them as independent elements on the picture elements card was quite a bit of a pain. Like that one card itself, because it's got so many elements on it, was like hundreds of lines of YAML long. And myself not being a coder, I was absolutely bashing my head against the wall for a lot of it. But hey, it's a learning experience. It was rewarding, I suppose. I guess everyone that's sort of onto this platform and into this, and obviously listening to this podcast is like, I guess used to that sort of that payoff once you actually get your stuff to work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just looking at your
this is really
the screenshot you've shared, and is this all? So this is all from the Home Assistant front end. This is all done in like YAML and Lovelace.
Yeah. So I'm a freelance graphic designer, so that basically has allowed me to kind of beat the picture elements card into doing what I want it to. Basically hard coding everything. So the way you should look at that is there's a overall picture, which is the main bit, which is all of the non-moving text as well as outlines for everything in grey. And then on top of that, I've overlaid the statistics that you see in the top. So those are pulling off of the Postgres server that we have. So everything using the recorder function, that then points to a Postgres server, and then we're using SQL queries to then generate numbers as sensor states, and then displaying those sensor states back on the front end. And that's what those ones are. Then we've got the cameras, which are Ubiquity things, like the whole plant has got a big recorder hard drive database. Not sure what the correct terminology is, but they've got a whole big camera setup that we kind of tied into. And then they use Rike, which is a sort of an industrial job planning software. And we use their API to output the job names. So we've crossed them out there just for privacy reasons, but basically that would show, as an example, Emirates Team New Zealand something job 1 or something. And that would basically update every time it logged another one on that particular machine. So they have, so the machines are numbered 1, 6, 8 through 13. And so what happens is if the spindle is tricked, because we have Controlinos, which are 24 volt big industrial Arduinos with Ethernet and a whole bunch of like big booty relay ports.
Yeah.
With all of those, we can set error states as well as like on states, if that makes sense. So like we have them tied to the main relays of the machines. So you can see there that like some of the machines are green, which means the spindle's running. And then you can see the little dotted line. Okay, the machine's running. There's a little picture of the spindle, and that's what job it's currently cutting out. And then below that was the time started or the time stopped. So the whole reason why they wanted this as a business integration was for sort of efficiency and I guess job throughput kind of a thing. We were talking to Cam just as we were Cam, who's again my manager, that it has brought a lot of value in the sense that like if a job stops between midnight and 9 a.m., they can tell exactly when it was stopped, and hopefully with a little bit more development why it was stopped.
That's cool.
Right. Yeah. So basically in the middle of your Lovelace, you've got all the green and red elements. I'm guessing they're machines, and so the green and red updates with their status. So that's really cool. So I'm guessing compared to a home, this would be like a floor plan, and you've basically got the state of what the machine's doing. If it's green or red, it's okay.
Yeah, there's a yellow error state too.
Yeah,
and then from that you can see the cameras.
Yeah. The whole point of this was to kind of get something that you could look at in a glance, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because like when something's running versus when something's not, if you're charging a couple $1,000s per like machine hour, then
Hmm.
knowing what's good and what's taking a couple hours for your CNC push button like CAD monkey to press go on, then it's like as soon as you can, start adding up those 5 or 10 minutes everywhere, then that's where the real value comes in for this equipment.
Yeah.
Also, I forgot to mention half of the reason why this was started was because they had a bit of a job that ran overnight that they had a little bit of an accident with, and there was a not insignificant fire. And basically,
Wow.
Oh no.
what the software was aiming to do was see that there's an error state or an alert state. So, okay, there's an error, then send a message to one of the managers. Manager then checks the online Nabu Casa portal to this, and then it's like, okay, machine's on fire, emergency stop. So with the tie-ins of Nabu Casa as well as the relays, you can basically
Mm.
remote stop the machines from anywhere in the world, which is another
Wow.
big plus for this application.
That's cool.
That is really cool.
So this is basically this is the brains of the operation, right? So what's really cool is I used to have a lot of manufacturing customers in the past, and this is actually something that they've invested, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in,
Mm.
right, into a system like this, right? And sure, maybe it's a different scale or what have you,
Yeah.
but especially for a small shop, this is actually really, really cool. And this doesn't even look that small, to be honest.
No, it's yeah, no, like Jackson's a fairly big company, but this
Yeah.
is it's I mean, honestly, I'm surprised we were able to like jump into the control boxes of these gigantic like tens of thousands of dollar machines. And
It's
like
not that difficult. Trust me. One thing I've learned through my experience where I work is these things are all exactly the same. If you can get into one, you can get into 100 of them
yeah,
anywhere in the
yeah.
world.
Well, they were a little bit dark when we shorted one of the main feed rate
Yeah. Oops.
thingies, but apart from that, we didn't blow too much stuff up, which was a win.
That's pretty good. It's have you I know there's a lot of folks that are actually taking this and even further down within the CNCs and any other PLCs and
Mm.
stuff that they have, and
Yeah,
they're going like controller level, and right, and then there's I mean this is getting really deep into one specific topic, so I apologize for that, but
yeah.
it's is there plans to do that, or are you doing that today, like in terms of like every single little thing to say, hey, you know what, down the road this might fail in 10 weeks, whatever.
Yeah. So one of the other things that we were sort of apologies if this is kind of tangential to your question, but there's one issue with CNCs, especially in big industrial ones. Like you can see the big red one at the top of the screen, that machine is 10
Hmm.
meters long.
Mm.
So if you've got a change in conditions, then your material can actually shrink or expand. And so one of the other value propositions of this was to say, okay, we had our part a couple mil undersized from what it should have been when the programmers were doing the toolpaths. What was the humidity in relative like weather and environment
Right.
conditions within the factory, so that you can actually start getting some idea as to how the environment changes the accuracy of your part.
Hmm.
And that is something that has been an issue for Jackson's previously.
Yeah, because there's definitely an environmental aspect to that too,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Moisture, temperature, all of that stuff, as especially
Mm.
with metals as they expand, contract, and so on.
Yeah.
No, that is very cool. Yeah, I've seen a lot of manufacturing companies that kind of again, like I was saying, they try and do that predictive piece, right?
Yeah.
More because, and I'm sure you know this, a second of downtime costs. How many ever, like
Oh,
a chain
absolutely.
reaction of that cost can cost millions of dollars, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So no, that is very cool. And just again, more out of curiosity, have you
Mm.
have you taken this kind of experience that you did professionally and kind of moved
Yeah.
that to your personal life too, or?
Yeah, so I've always been kind of a tinkerer at heart. So
Mhm.
I mean, this morning I'm pulling an engine out of a van and putting it in my little self-contained tiny home van thing. because I blew the engine up out of the old one, and I'm trying to integrate a little bit more Arduino monitoring into that. So a lot of people do biodiesel conversions for those. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get relative fuel consumption and then just engine monitoring off of it. So I've bought like temp sensors as well as like flow rate sensors, and I'm going to try and get some sort of logging into that. But my next sort of I have bought a Raspberry Pi of my own, well, another one that I haven't blown up, to go and do something. But with the makerspace that I work at closed down, it's a little bit hard to get in and use the laser cutter for like mounts and stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I shout out to Unleash Space at the University of Auckland. It's a great time if anyone's keen to come and chat in person.
For sure.
No, that's awesome. So it sounds like we're gonna have to get you on another episode once that's done, and see how all that's gone too.
Yeah. Like it's very interesting, I suppose, because I didn't know Home Assistant existed before Cam was like, "Oh, hey boys, try this." It was like it was good being thrown in like head first, basically.
Sure.
And there's such a big community behind it that it's a testament to the platform that it's managed to, congregate a bunch of really cool, really intelligent people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like anything that's quite open platform, in that when you're looking for your one obscure problem with your one random error code, you get linked to a forum from 4 years ago that doesn't really end in anything valuable.
Yep.
As more people kind of jump on the platform and experience that, I guess people like yourselves are then, I guess, incentivized to go and make like comprehensive guides to, like the most up-to-date ways of doing things and methods and all of that.
Yeah. No, it is one of those things where, again, especially with this kind of stuff, the community is huge, right? I don't think, and I'm fairly certain that the developers or the core guys also agree with me on this, is that I don't think the product would be what it is without that community, right? So yeah, it's definitely cool, and this is such a cool use case. Like I'm still so again, like I said, I'm not an industrial like OT person by any means, but I've always had manufacturing customers or customers that had to deal with all this stuff, so I always take a little bit of an interest.
Yeah.
I think I know enough to be dangerous with that kind of stuff, but it's still cool to see how this kind of machine automation and just monitoring and all that stuff is, makes a big difference, right, to a company.
Yeah. And it's been cool in the sense that it's tied in a whole bunch of different branches of the company. Like I was talking to Cam as like a wind down for this project, and we had a talk about scope, and there's a whole bunch of other, I guess, throughput metrics that could be captured with this. Like they have these big robotic arms that do rotomolding. So you take your liquid plastic in a mold and you kind of turn it around and spit it out, kind of thing. With I guess replicable processes like those, it's quite valuable in the sense that you can make a 10-second adjustment to a toolpath, and then you can see that sort of in the Postgres database, like your instance of like part throughput would, like, you can actually track that a little bit more. And this is only one of the pages. We've actually got individual machine pages with all of the emergency stops as well as the fan suction table stops. And then we have more like a secondary data table with more like Grafana graphs and stuff like that. Yeah, so right. We've got other, I guess, displays of data. It's not just this page that you see. But yeah.
So in terms of getting the data, is Home Assistant responsible for polling everything and then putting it into those Postgres databases, or is it get the data out from somewhere else? And
so you'll have to forgive me because it was a couple months ago that I did this. So excuse me if I get any terminology wrong. But basically, we've got our controlinos that are acting as little. We started off with Node MCUs as our little like test case things. And then we set them up as sensors, so it's like, pin 13 is high or whatever. And then we set that up as a sensor. And we basically did the exact same thing there on our controlinos. to then show on the front end as a sensor or a switch, because there are several types of sensors within Home Assistant, each of them having their pros and cons, and effectively all of them just being representative of a different change in state of a particular thing. So you can set up a sensor to be a switch or a Boolean or an input Boolean or whatever else.
Yeah.
With the different data types, you're basically more able to control what the output has, or sorry, what the output is in the database, and so that means that you can kind of make the data when you're using it a little bit easy to work with, should I say? And yeah, that was something that we spent a lot of time on, just kind of changing it from one to another, so that we could have your machine state, like as an example, the red, green, yellow on the front end there, that's its own sensor, and that sensor is a gateway of 3 different sensors. So it'll have like a machine temperature sensor, a spindle sensor, and something else, and those will control an arbitrary non-actual physical sensor within the Home Assistant platform, and then that will then trigger the change in color. And it was just the little processes like that we tried to put in to make the platform a little bit more flexible, in the sense that, like, if we had your spindle always just making the green icon show up, then if you had your error and then it started as well, then your error would then be buried under the thing.
Right.
Yes, yeah. So you got to make sure that the errors have high priority over the other ones, and make sure, like, basically your case statements are in the right order.
Yeah, exactly. So that was, those case statements were just used to make sure that we had an overall reflection of what each machine was doing. And then we also had the individual sensor data from the individual machine on its own sensor, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So when you built this, so let's say this is Matt, day 0, walks in, project gets handed to you.
Yeah.
How did you go about doing this? So did you say, okay, first I'm just going to connect up all the sensors, see what I can pull into Home Assistant, and then do that after, or was it kind of the other way, or like what was the process there? If somebody wanted to do this themselves, how would they get started?
So it was quite good in the sense that Cam had a lot of base knowledge around this, so any sort of individual niggly queries that we had, we could kind of direct to him for the first maybe week or two, and then we kind of surpassed that. But so the way it worked, we got thrown the thing, we got it online on day 1, which I was absolutely stoked about. It was a little bit daunting. Only because I guess because I'm not a programmer by any means. Like, I study psychology.
Sure.
So all of this is, I guess, the way I explained it to my friends when I went home frustrated at the end of the day when my code wasn't working, is that all of it is just an elaborate, like, Rube Goldberg machine, where it's like, if one thing isn't passing something to something else, none of it works. And so about a week in, we got our little node MCUs talking to each other and remote changing. We just got it changing like dumb little LEDs over the business network. From there, we tied into the existing Controlinos, so they have a big extraction unit that already had some of them in there, and then we had various iterations of front end until we sort of discovered new and different features. Like, we really only put the Nabu Casa thing in the last sort of 3 weeks of the project, because we didn't know it existed before that.
Yeah.
And there were just lots of little things where it was like, okay, this one's good, but can we do it this way? And kind of sculpted it to be something that was functional but also aesthetic. Like, for example, the front end that uses like company colors, company fonts, and company like style guides and all that sort of stuff. And I feel like just that level of polish on the end product makes it seem a little bit more valuable than I guess just your standard Lovelace front end with your 1 or 2 little automatic cards. And so we kind of surpassed the what is it? The Lovelace like auto card generation thing, like where you press the little plus button on the bottom right. We went straight into YAML mode like 5 weeks or so into it, just because
Yeah.
we, I guess, passed the limitations of what the initial one was was able to do for us. But it was awesome in the sense that you could press that little button, have the little drop-down menus of all your sensors, and have something going straight away. So it was great to be able to jump back and forth between them and go, okay, why isn't my stuff working? Go right back to the way that the little plus button thing auto-generates it, have a look at that YAML code, and then go, okay, this is where it differs from my one.
Yeah, that's cool.
You use the builder as like a debug tool. That's really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So is this UI, I'm guessing in their office, they've got it up on a big screen somewhere, like on a TV.
Yeah.
That's just constantly being monitored.
Yeah. So they've got one that's down in the sort of ad toolpath kind of area where they have all of the people making the all of like the tooling and all of those decisions, and then they've also put one upstairs in the sort of main, I guess, sales office, because that's where all of the sort of higher admin are and the people that are sending the jobs downstairs.
Yeah.
And so it's useful for both of them to be able to go, okay, machine 13 is now like it started like a couple hours ago, and yeah, it started at this time, and the runtime is approximately X, so it should be done by now or something.
Has Home Assistant got any control over any devices at all at the thing? So, for example, let's say a fire is detected. Does Home Assistant have automations in place to shut machines down if it needs to? Or would that be like a phase 2?
Yeah, that's definitely a phase 2. So when I initially got consulted on this internship, it was initially for a fire suppression system that we would be developing because of the problem explained earlier. But then there was either that or doing this, and so obviously not being a fire technician or any of that, this kind of turned into what it is now. But there is scope that we were looking for either CO2 sensors or sort of thermal sensors to be integrated into that.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we have it completely passive, in the sense that it will throw an error and it will say, hey, look at something, but then all it's going to do is point the big turn the thing off button in front of you. It's not going to, it's not going to do it itself at this stage.
Yeah, so a human is still going to have to do something in order for an action to be taken. Yeah, which I'm guessing when you've got big machines like this, probably err on the side of caution.
Yeah, definitely. Because we did have a reasonably big issue where with some of the machines we couldn't, with our big error kill this operation now kind of a thing, some of the machines we tied into the feed hold button, and some of them we tied into the actual like stop the process, if that makes sense. And so it threw a couple errors when we would feed hold the machines, because effectively all we were doing was stopping the spindle in what it was doing. Yeah, so we did run into a couple errors with that, just in the sense that it's literally like an Arduino plugged into some big like industrial relays, but with a little bit more debugging and a little bit more sort of optimization of the actual controls or commands that it's giving the machines, we can definitely give it a little bit more power over that.
And I'm guessing, so you've got a whole bunch of Arduinos in these big machines everywhere. Yeah. How were you able to integrate? So are they, like, obviously an Arduino needs its own power source. Have you got, like power? Are you able to get power from the machine itself, or have you had to run external power sources for those sort of sensors as well?
So the great thing about this was that a lot of the legwork had already been done for us. We used Controlinos, as I say, and the business already had a couple of those that were just sitting on a shelf and were already used in other parts of the plant. So all we did was we went, okay, what are they doing? How are they currently being set up as like Arduino-based platforms? And go, okay, we'll just order 8 or 9 more of those. They're just 24 volts, so just plug it into the 24 volt rail on the big control cabinet of the CNC.
Right.
Give it its own relays that then control the machine, and you're away laughing.
Yeah, that's really cool. So it basically becomes, it just looks part of the product anyway, like it's out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. Like like they fit on the DIN rails. We got they have big like DIN slots for them anyway. Like they're designed for the big like racks and control stuff in there. So yeah, we the way that most of the setups worked, where it was literally just you had a power, a ground, a feed to the relay, and then on any of the machines that we had vacuum tables for, we had vacuum sensors that were plugged into the vacuum tables, just a line coming off the a line teeing off the main thing and just going into the control cabinet that had another thing, so we could have vacuum table percentage, so whether the thing was on or not.
Mm-hmm. And so coming out of the other side, did you find any limitations in Home Assistant? Like, you had, like this item on the checklist that you wanted to do, but you just couldn't find a way to do it or anything like that?
Yeah. So the good thing about Home Assistant, I feel like, is that anything can be done with enough suffering and enough like bashing your head against the wall. Like as an example, I tried to use I can't remember what it was called, but there's a fully built-in floor plan thing that you can use as one of your like screens on Home Assistant, and it's like you just change one thing and then it automatically updates. I tried to get that to work forever, and then it's like, nope, that doesn't work. I'm going to make all of these individual images, I'm going to make all of these individual things and just shove it on a picture elements card, and it works. And so I guess the only thing that we struggled with was a little bit of the debugging phase, I suppose, because as you guys probably know, there's you can have these config files that are like megabytes big, just of like all of your different like pictures and all of your like little tie-ins, and if one of those all of a sudden doesn't work, then all it does is give you the does not pass error or whatever it is on the little it doesn't easily point you in the direction where you want to go, I suppose. So yeah, the only issue that I really had was debugging. Yeah.
To that, the right YAML line. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, that is probably just me and my the fact that I'm not very experienced in coding. Anyway.
Well, I mean, proof's right here. I think you've done a pretty awesome job to be able to.
Yeah, you are now. So
full disclosure, there was me and one other intern, and he handled a lot of the Python stuff. But it was definitely a team effort.
Yeah, for sure.
That's wicked.
Yeah. The only thing that I could say is like firstly, I really appreciate all of the people who put out content in relation to this, because it's such an awesome platform, and I'm definitely wanting to do more of it myself. And people like me couldn't do it without people like them. And so, who's that guy? Juan?
Yeah, Juan MTech. Yeah.
He his videos were so concise and so great. As a guide for this sort of stuff, people like that are really benefiting the community, and I think they probably need to be applauded more. Absolutely.
No, totally agree. Well, Matt, thank you so much for sharing this awesome screenshot and this awesome use case for Home Assistant. I know Rohan and I usually, we get to talk to a lot of people that, automating their homes, but we really do love seeing, the edge cases that Home Assistant gets to do, especially in commercial settings and all that. And this is but this has been a fantastic use case for Home Assistant.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks. Happy to be here.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Sweet.
If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@hasspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics that we discussed today, check out our show notes on hasspodcast.io.